Yes, y'all. Last call, y'all. Reacts. Welcome to the video I do once a week on the sub. This one's been on the background or the back burner for the last couple of weeks while this has been going on. It's got to gnaw at me a little bit for me to say something about it. And I think this one has. I don't have any graphics for you today going back and forth. I would have just put another video in the background so I could just talk about this in the meantime. And what am I talking about? I'm talking about the Riyadh. Have you heard of this? You should have heard of this already. I mean, if you like comedy, you're somewhere in the comedy world, and there's some people that you follow, and there's just simply news on that matter. So let me give you a little bit of background in case you don't know. And I really would like to hear what people's opinions, information, and then tell you a little bit about what I think. Now, the Riyadh Comedy Festival was an international comedy festival held from September 26th to October 9th. So, maybe about a couple weeks ago over there. But the news and some of the backlash that the performers have been facing is kind of still going on, and people are still dropping little notes about it here or there. And come is for some of those comedians that perform and then came back home here, and is business going to be the same? Is this like anything? Anyway, let me get into it. All right, so this is something that Saudi Arabia put on. The festival featured many high-profile comedians in a variety of comedy styles, like stand-up, satire, skimprov. The event was announced July 23rd, so there's a lot of time to be angry all summer to get angry about that. Although people seem to, have their outrage during and after the fact. This is if you were really serious about, standing up or protesting, you knew it was coming. You didn't do anything to try to stop it or whatever, but voice your opinion. First Amendment. This is what we're all about, right? The event that was announced then, and let me just move to a little bit. Now, Saudi Arabia is a strategy to position cultural and artistic events. So, sort of like a rebranding, if you will. This event drew criticism due to Saudi Arabia's poor human rights record, as well as censorship rules contractually imposed on the performers. Several comedians who were invited to perform declined and spoke out against it. He said several. And to speak out, were urged to speak out about human rights abuses and violations and not to be complicit in any of the whitewashing of such abuses. That's interesting, and interesting as well. Language, right? So again, it says the Ryder Comedy Festival, the Ryder, the Riyadh. It's all the slang, spelling, and everything, man. You used to like tag and shit. Just the way you see shit is so crazy. Let me do that again. The Riyadh Comedy Festival was the first event of its kind to be hosted in Saudi Arabia. It aimed to position Riyadh as a hub for international cultural and artistic events, as we said, to improve Saudi Arabia's global image. Now, of the people who actually appeared there. Now, I know comedy. I wouldn't say I'm always up on the latest stuff and know what's going on, but there's a few names I used to follow from way back before you heard of them. All right. Here's just some of the names and some of the people that I read. Sorry, who was explaining his case on Jimmy Kimmel not too long ago. Wayne Brady, Hannibal Buress, Billy. He was called Billy Burr back in the day. Who seems to be catching the most shit and not being as diplomatic as maybe Jimmy Carr. Dave Chappelle was over there. Louis C.K., Whitney Cummings, Pete Davidson, who, all right, there's a lot of people in here that they got the moniker comedian Rogan's Fair and every don't necessarily have the chops, in my opinion. Anyway, Zarna Garg, Ben Hart, Kevin Hart, who I haven't heard anything from, Gabriel, who should be over there. He's an international dude. Jessica Curson, your boy Joe Coy, Bobby Lee, Sebastian Maniscalco. I can't say his name, the Italian dude. He's very funny. Sam Morrill, who is Mark Norman, Russell Peters, the international man, Jeff Ross, Sugar Sammy, Andrew Schultz, Tom Segura, Ali Sadiq was over there, and just a few other names. Ari Spears was there, and Chris Tucker was there also, and a couple other names. Dude, you might know him from his podcast. Tim Dillon was removed from the list of performers to jokes that he made on his podcast about slavery in Saudi Arabia. So they took him away from that before. He decided to defend his decision to appear on the festival anyway. Namish Patel announced that he was dropping out of the festival on ethical grounds. So why'd you even sign the goddamn contract or whatever? After comments on Theo Von's podcast, Jim Jeffries was removed from the festival as well. So let's find out a little bit more about that. So a lot of the comedians that are getting criticism, it's about human rights, and from human rights organizations, Human Rights Watch, the organization of that Saudi government, of purportedly using the event to whitewash its image and urge any performers at the event to call for the release of journalists and activists imprisoned in the Middle Eastern country. Mike Birbiglia, Shane Gillis were invited to perform, but ultimately declined and spoke out against gigs for putting on a fun face for the Saudis and their crimes against humanity. Some critics also noticed the hypocrisy, stating that some comedians at the festival previously voiced complaints about the lack of free speech and stand-up comedy in the U.S. Bill Burr was one of those people. Actually, if you look it up online, he has a little rant talking shit about people that did that, particularly when, who was it? You know who I'm talking about. Beyonce and a couple people performed over there. And for Gaddafi as well, right? And I'll get to a couple things about that in a minute. I don't want this to be so long, even. So anyway, let's just cut down to some of the other things. Other comedians, including Mark Maron, like that guy too, and his podcast, which ended. He's one of the first people to get on that train. And Zach Woods criticized the event and the comedians performing there. Maron derided the Prince and the festival performers in a stand-up routine. I'm not going to imitate. Basically, is what he's saying in there is from the folks joking about from the folks that bought you 9/11, 2 weeks of laughter. Don't miss it. I mean, some guy's got to pay for them. The same guy that's paying for I can't read that on here. But don't let that stop the yucks. Have a good time, right? So, this sarcastic mocking some of the people that went over there. And I could understand that. Isn't that kind of like a Snoop Dogg thing when he went in there about performing for Trump and this, that, the other, and then what'd he do? I don't know if you get that bag, you get that whatever it is, and I don't want to say your morals or ethics change, but maybe it's just another kind of perspective, right? And I don't know. I'm never gonna be rich enough to have to change my morals and all that shit like that. Maybe that's one of the good things about it. You're in a different stratosphere with that. So a lot of people believe they're being exploited for the propaganda of it. Now, one guy, David Cross, I know you know this guy. I guess most popular. He's been a stand-up for a long time. He had his shows. He had the guy from Better Call Saul. They had a show together, Mr. Show, actually, I think it's called. He's done the Blue Man thing on Arrested Development. He plays these goofy characters, but he's one of these comedians that takes himself way seriously and maybe wants to project a little bit about how intelligent he is when it comes to this. But he pens an open letter condemning the comedians that agreed to perform. This day and age, who could condemn who, right? I'm going to get to that in just a minute before I wrap it up. Anyway, David Cross will continue by saying, you go and do this, you're disappointed, and just at the regime, and for what? A fourth house, a boat, more sneakers. They were performing for blood money, and blood money is a term that comes up a lot through this, but we'll get to something in a little bit. Some performing comedians defended accepting the offer. Prior to his fighting, Tim Dillon stated that he was offered almost $400,000 to perform at the festival. A lot of these guys, you listen. I mean, if you're not one of those top comedians, man, you're not going to be offered this kind of money. Apparently, Bill Burr got about 1.6 mil for the gig. It's like all expense paid. There's that. You get the hotels, everything that you want. A lot of these performers who are never going to have, when Netflix specials used to be the thing, or HBO and everything, this is probably going to be their biggest payday if they're looking beyond that. He said, we're comedians. We're looking the other way. They pay us enough to look the other way. Jim Jeffries, also pretty funny. I think he's an Australian dude, but his name. He's been around for a long time too. Argued that Saudi Arabia's human rights record was comparable to the one of United States. And that's kind of like one of my points over here, but I'll get to that in a second. Jeffries argued that Saudi Arabia's human rights record, just said that. There's been a reporter who they killed. You think the government here in the U.S. hasn't off people like Epstein? He says a couple names and stuff here as well. Jeffries also commented on the criticism of the festival during an appearance on Theo Von's podcast, saying in reference to the June 14th execution of, I will just say, Turk al-Jazar in Saudi Arabia, one reporter was offed by the government. Unfortunate, but not a effing hill that I'm going to die on. Meaning Jeffries doesn't want to stand with that as well, and argued it was for the greater good, freedom of speech, for people like himself to bring their edgy material to the Saudi audiences. After making these remarks, Jeffrey was removed from the festival's lineup, and a representative did not respond to his, firing on that. Pete Davidson said he was offered enough money to overcome his reservations. All right, if you want to call that selling out too. Dave Chappelle joked during his routine at the festival, it's easier to talk here than it is in America. So a lot of people are kind of like shitting on America for that. But that's probably part of the comedy likeness, to adapt, I guess. I know that's a bad word. To adapt with your audience. But Louis C.K. called his involvement in the festival positive and was surprised at the fact that the only restriction on material that he had was not to talk shit about the government. These are my words here. And not to talk shit about Islam. Bill Burr defended his appearance on the festival, calling it a mind-blowing experience. You got to figure, too, like if you're just a person and you get waited on hand and foot to have this experience because of the craft that you've worked so hard on, that hell yeah, go and maybe do that, right? One of the top 3 experiences that he had in his life. He found a lot of the experiences over there in Saudi Arabia, kind of like America, at least, what he was shown. We know a lot of these countries, man, they put on a show for visitors. They do it with the Olympics, everything else, and on a smaller scale because of their 2030 project. They're definitely trying to put on a good face for the globe, I would imagine. Bill had ranted about the billionaires and stated They should be put down like rabid dogs. This is one of the things that he said in there. How could Burr even get mad about billionaires after insisting that the Saudi royal family over there is just like us? And noted Bill has exactly what I said at the beginning as well. I'm not going to go through all the comics, but I got a couple of things in here. You know, I'm definitely not going to pretend I have better ethics and morals than, a lot of people, especially that I'm not in one's shoes. I think in one time, especially in celebrities' lives, we're very quick to criticize about what we would do in their shoes. And you don't know. Like I said, it's a different stratosphere. Try, even if you get a promotion at whatever job you're on right now, you might, if the promotion's good enough, you might be on a different stratosphere than some of the workers used to work with maybe 10 years ago, 15 years ago. Shit just changes like that. But the thing that bothers me the most, or one of the things that bother me the most about this, is that any American cannot sit on their righteous high horse and condemn any other nation about human rights, especially with this week. We have the No Kings protests all over the country. We have a MAGA president who preaches racist things. One of their advocates is oft at one of his events, one that preached divisiveness, who scapegoated racial topics, everything like that. Got a F1 fucking jet to his home in Arizona. We have racist Republicans with their messages being leaked. We have a country founded on slavery. Still no reparations for the people that were involved and carried this country on their backs longer than this country was a country. And people are going to turn around and talk about blood money in Saudi Arabia. Get over your fucking self with that bullshit. It's so easy for people to remain pious on their high horse about what they could do and point their finger at everything. But number one, you're not in that position. Number two, now we're putting it on the backs of these entertainers to carry the pride, to carry the message from this country and now globally. Now, you weren't paying attention when other comedians helped putting this fucker, orange, goddamn unethical moron in the White House. He's tearing down the White House as we speak. As we speak, West Wing, Bubba, you can't even have that show with Martin Sheen anymore. No West Wing. A ballroom for this idiot. I hope the next president tear that shit down and say, put it back to the original plans, how the slaves made it in the first place. But I'm ranting a little too much on what I just really want to know, because first I'm looking at it and I'm like, all right, politics inside the country, and we shouldn't be policing the world outside of the country. They get guidelines there too. So if fucking Apple wants Bill Burr, Dave Chappelle, Louis C.K. to perform for a fucking Apple retreat or some shit, you know what? Hey, you're not allowed to use this language. Don't talk shit about Steve Jobs or any of these people going on. Slavery, blood-soaked soil in America for what the fuck they're doing there in Saudi Arabia. How is this place better? Shut the fuck up with that, man. And on the other side of that, I don't want any of these comedians think that they're doing some sort of freedom bus ride over there to Saudi Arabia either, to in the name of liberty and free speech, this, that. That's not it. Say, you know what? I'm not particularly bothered by some of the shit going over there. We got our own shit over there. This is what they're doing. It's not hurting me. That money's coming from oil because they knocked down the towers or anything like that. Some of their laws seem archaic, what they do with the women and whatnot. But you know what? Turn on CNN, even your beloved Fox News. And guess what? Click on the shit that they're doing now. So nobody should be on their high horse about that. Nobody really. These are contractors. So if they're contracted out to perform somewhere under particular guidelines, then so be it. They don't owe you shit. All of a sudden they're a soldier for this country. Say it ain't so. Say it ain't so. Am I not being patriotic enough? Somebody, let me know in the comments exactly what it is. Am I thinking about this all wrong? Because over the time of the 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever it is, when this thing was boiling over on YouTube, all the threads and all this place, I was like, yeah, let me see how the, these are grown ass men and women, Americans, most of them. Certainly, they have something in their moral compass that would repel them from that would make them not be able to sleep at night, that would keep them up. And maybe whatever the price is allows them to sleep even more comfortably than if they rejected the gig. I don't necessarily feel like people who didn't go over there or rejected it or got fired are doing anything in the ways of human rights or standing up or should be applauded. I really don't think it's a big deal, because you know what? They pass on it today, they'll sell out on something else tomorrow that fits their particular brand. And most of them, idiots, your brand is Trump. So don't get on here talking out the side of your neck like you are more superior or you have more sense than some people, because you don't. Anyway, this is Last Call Reacts. A little longer than I wanted. Glad you came out to see this. Do me a favor, man. Hit that like, share, subscribe. Meet me on Friday at 9 p.m. on the Super Duper Live. Check out the catalog with everything that we have going on over there. Some of the music, some of the words. Put on a podcast. Go cook. Go hike. Go do something. Fall asleep, because you will like the vibes, man. This is Last Call Reacts. We are out.